So thank you, Jocelyn, for this presentation. And now we're going to spend the next 30 minutes to discuss content. So to do so, I'm joined by Dominic Troll, Director Programming and Content Management CTV and App at Motovision, and Bernard Glögler, Director Content Distribution and Partnerships at Roku, Germany. So, gentlemen, welcome. Could you please give us a bit of background about yourself and the company just before we start the discussion? So.
Sure. Yeah, Motovision is a producer of automotive content, and we also own and operate 2 pay TV channels and 7 fast channels all over the world. And well, I'm director of programming for the fast channels and our app.
Bernhard.
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Bernhard, and I'm working for Roku, which is one of the leading streaming platforms globally. We operate in multiple territories. We are based in San Jose, in the San Francisco area. And our goal is really to enable content partners to monetize their streaming apps, their content as good as possible on our platform, and make the user interface as seamlessly and easy for the consumer. And I'm looking after the German-speaking markets here for Roku, and yeah, partnerships and content.
Thanks. So now maybe let's start with Dominic as a pure content provider here. Before maybe talking about content itself, could you give us some details on your strategy regarding distribution to be available across as many devices as possible?
Yeah, as I said, we are producing automotive content, and we have been for 20 years. And when we started out as a TV show on the German Sport TV, that was on 4 times a week, and since then it has developed in, as I said, our pay TV and fast channels. When we started the fast channels, we weren't sure what to make of it. So we have started with short clips. We discussed what to do, so we will not cannibalize our pay TV channels. So we started with like YouTube-like clips, and we just wanted to see where that goes. And then almost immediately there was revenue coming in, and so we thought, what should we do next with that? And then I saw, I think it was in 2020, it was an online workshop by Samsung, and they told about the SVOD fatigue, that people will not like have more than 3 pay. Sorry, that's my first time. So they will not have more than 4 paid services, and so I thought, okay, that surely there's a cap of money that can be made by paid services. So we thought, okay, we have to put more effort and more long-form programming into the fast channels. Because that's also what they said, that people want to see that. Not only the short clips, but also long-form content. And most recently, we have started live broadcasting of car races. For example, we have on the fast channels the Porsche Carrera Cup, we have Brazilian stock car racing. And since we have just started, we don't know yet how that will do, but from our experiences from the pay channels, live is always a good thing for viewers.
And if we focus here on CTVs, what are the main challenges to be onboarded on CTVs with the fragmentation of devices, of OS?
For us, of course, it is challenging. Of course, we're trying to get on every platform, because it doesn't make sense to leave some out. So we're trying to get on every platform, but every platform seems to have a different operating system. They're having different ways how they would like the EPG data to be sent to them, and that has been a challenge. We're working with different providers for EPG data. We're working with Otera, with Amagi for the streams. So it feels like not really a linear delivery. It's like a spider web. We're sending the signal from one company to another because not every company accepts every delivery partner, and so that's the challenge there.
Bernard, as Dominic mentioned, and we've also seen with the previous presentations, that there is a growing number of OS, and the market is more and more fragmented, also on the retail side. So what's your view on that? Do you think there would be a need for the TV OS to consolidate?
Yeah, definitely. I think we are in this transition situation at the moment from traditional broadcast TV to streaming TV. And the operating system market is pretty interesting because there's a lot of money in it. We talked about it in all of the presentations before. Advertising dollars probably will shift from linear traditional television to CTV advertising. And the operating system, in a sense, is, I wouldn't call it, we're maybe the middleman. We sometimes internally say we are the glue between the consumer, the content owners, and the advertisers. So we kind of create like a middleman position. And that's why there are so many operating systems currently in the market. And I think similar to what happened in mobile and on browsers, I think there will be a consolidation in the next few years. What that few years will mean, whether it's 2 or 5 years, I don't know, but we definitely think that in a few years' time there will be less operating systems, and therefore then hopefully also less complexity for content partners to publish their apps and their content globally. And I think that's definitely also, I hear that a lot, that adding another operating system and another app that runs on a very specific operating system is a challenge for some of the service providers.
And now, if we move among this fragmentation to content itself, just as an introduction, what would be the key pillars of your content strategy?
You mean the Roku content strategy?
Or Roku.
Well, first of all, I mean, we are a streaming platform, so I wouldn't say we don't care, but to us it doesn't really matter what people watch. So whether they watch sports or whether they watch fiction or live or whatever, we want to make sure that consumers stick to our platform and stream as much as possible. So it's not in our core interest to prefer one genre over the other, but definitely I think when we launch in a market, like Germany, for example, we start with a very strong global content offering. We have the relevant global apps on our platform. We add all local apps that are relevant, be that the public service broadcasters or the commercial local apps. And then over time, when we have gained reach, like we're in many households, we are investing in our own content. We have that Roku channel that is available in many of our markets where we license content, and that is mainly, let's say, mainly mainstream content, so evergreen movies, evergreen series, some local content. And that's the strategy, how we build our own content offering. We add some originals to it sometimes, but I think starting with global and local third-party apps and then adding our own AVOD content to it, that's the strategy, how we normally enter a market.
Okay. Dominic, you on your side, and like Bernard, you want people to stick at sports and to watch sports. So what's your strategy in general in terms of content?
Well, as I have mentioned, live motorsport is always a good thing for us. So there will be more of it on the fast channels in our app. But as we are a producer of niche content, we have to make sure that although it is a pretty big niche, we have to cover everything in it. So because also in different territories, people want to watch different things. So, for example, we know that in South America, people watch a lot of supercars content, sports cars. We know that rally events, we have a lot of rally highlights. They work everywhere. But also we're we have a show called Go Green, which centers around new developments in the car industry. Also like mobility apps and stuff like that. So that's becoming a part that is more and more important. But of course, as I said, motorsport is a big driver.
And obviously sports is mostly something consumed live, so did you try to acquire rights to new races to enhance the offering with live events?
Well, we have or had live on our pay TV channels for a very long time. For example, we have the American NASCAR series that has a lot of fans also in Germany. And on the fast channels, we show like the European version of it. And the second league, there is a series called Xfinity. That's the second league, and we show that on the fast channels. And on the premium channel, we show the first league that's called the Cup Series. We also have IMSA, which is also an American series. And on the fast channels, we have series, as I said, like the Porsche Carrera Cup and smaller series, but also series that have an audience.
And what about you, Bernard, for live events? How is it crucial for you to, because we say that live TV is declining, but what's your view on this topic?
Well, look, I mean, live events, especially sports, be that Formula One or the big football matches or sports event, NFL in the US, they have, I think those are the only content types that still gather an audience at one specific point in time in a mass, in a real big mass. And therefore, if the goal of a broadcaster or a streaming service is to gather a huge audience in front of the screen at the same time, then sports or live events generally are definitely the one content type to look into. With sports, I mean, we all see that in all markets, that rights are very fragmented these days. There are, if you want to watch football here in Germany, you at least need 2 streaming services or 2 subscriptions. So it's becoming more and more challenging also for the end consumer to find what is where, what can I watch now, what is live. And we have tackled that situation recently with launching what we call a sports zones, or a dedicated area in our user interface where we are collecting all the data from different streaming services and linear broadcasters to make in one user interface a clear overview to the consumer what he can watch at this moment, in which streaming service, on which linear broadcast. And I think that gives people more guidance and makes it easier for them to find the content they want to watch. But to your question on live, definitely this is something very important to gather audiences at a specific moment in time.
And obviously you gather and aggregate a lot of content from different sources. So if, I don't know, a service content provider comes at you, a very niche content provider, how do you think they can stand out in the CTV space?
Well, personally, I think for niche services, the transition from broadcast to streaming is the best thing that could have happened, because we saw that presentation earlier that it's expensive to develop connected TV apps. But nevertheless, I think if you develop a few connected TV apps for the biggest platforms, even as a niche service, you can reach a global audience pretty quickly. And I think the niche services are the winners of that whole streaming transition. For sure, they need to stand out. There are, I don't know, millions of different contents available, and how, as a niche service, do you stand out? I think artificial intelligence and recommendations will make that much easier in the future to find niche services. But I can give you an example. I mean, we see on our platform that niche services like ethnic television offerings, they attract maybe a small portion of our user base, but these users are extremely loyal. They watch these services on a monthly basis, significantly more than an average user is watching Netflix or Disney+. So I think for niche services, the key will be to promote their apps or their fast channels or their AVOD content in a smart way on these platforms. But again, I said artificial intelligence and recommendation engines will definitely help to make them to make them findable and accessible easily.
And you, Dominic, how do you make sure that your fans, because obviously you have a very dedicated fan base, can find you among all this content in the CTV space?
Well, we are a small company, so we don't have a lot of budget for marketing, but of course we do something. We have tried on social media. We have some test campaigns on Facebook, on Instagram. We have hired a social media manager, which we hadn't thought of doing 2 years ago, but it's getting more and more important, and we see that it helps bringing people to our fast channels and also differentiate between our pay TV offering and the fast offering, because people didn't know that it's something different. So whenever a NASCAR race was on and people turned on Samsung TV Plus, they were writing to us, what are you doing? Where is it? And so with the social media, we could make sure that people know about the fast channels and also know what's on which platform. So that has helped us a lot.
And to develop these fast channels, are you producing original content dedicating for them, or how do you produce between the pay TV and the fast channels?
We certainly would produce content exclusively for the fast channels. If we could, we would lose money at the moment if we just used it on fast. But what we do is we produce content and put it on the fast channels first, which is a thing that probably not many do at the moment. But at the moment, the fast channels are a good and solid add-on revenue, but we cannot produce hundreds of hours of content with it yet. But of course, if that changes, we would love to.
Yeah, and it also echoes something that Bernard said earlier, to gain scale. Because, for example, Roku is producing original content in the US, but is in plans for Europe.
I would say the originals are a very, very small portion of our total content offering. It is simply extremely expensive to compete with the really big streaming services on original content. So you have to either be very smart in finding some pearls somewhere that others didn't pick. We had the opportunity with a movie called The Weird Al Yankovic Story, which really resonated very well. And other than that, we are doing some sort of original content, but still most of the content we have on our own Roku channel is licensed and acquired content.
Okay.
I mean, it's a great opportunity to market these shows and to differentiate from other platforms or other services. But it's a very very expensive form of marketing.
And obviously we're here to talk about content, but obviously with FAST there is the advertising that comes into the topic. So what is the intersection between like e-commerce and content? Because obviously we see that Roku did something with Shopify here.
Mm-hmm.
So how you can combine advertising and content through creative advertisements?
Yeah, creative solutions I think is key. There was I think someone mentioned it in the earlier discussions. Nothing is rocket science, but these days a pre-roll, mid-roll is standard, and if you want to be a little bit more creative, something we did, for example, is we partner with retailers, and if during a movie or a show there is some product in there that people want to buy, then we direct them through our home screen or through a button to a dedicated shopping page. We call it shoppable ads. People then can simply buy the product and purchase it and get it delivered within the next day. I think those are opportunities to do advertising a little bit differently and to make it more compelling to the consumer. I think ideally an ad doesn't interrupt the entertainment experience, but is part of it. And that's hard for every ad break, but in some instances we try at least to be creative with our advertisers.
Okay. And also we, with Roku Brand Studio, you're trying to be more involved in this creative
Yeah, definitely.
space.
I mean, there is, look, we have our, what we call Roku City. If someone's on the screen and doesn't interact with it, then there's a screensaver that comes up and shows an iconic city view. And then we build in, for example, a McDonald's and therefore monetize some of that inventory. And that's exactly what we try to do, become a bit more creative in finding additional advertising solutions.
And for you, Dominique, would it be like to consider to use advertising like on the CCTV space also to sell, for example, tickets for races or to do such kind of partnerships?
Of course, we would consider it, but actually we haven't tried yet. I believe this is something that will come, although a lot have tried before and it has never worked. But I think with AI and really smart products that can work, and then we would, of course, try.
Okay. And talking about something you already mentioned, Bernard, about recommendation and how to provide the consumer with the right data at the right moment. So which tools are you currently using, and what would be the next step in the content recommendation?
Yeah, I think in the beginning we focused a lot on what we call the universal search. Again, this was a topic earlier already. We collect metadata from all our content partners, and if someone's searching for a specific actor, then all the results show up across streaming services. So if someone's searching for Johnny Depp, then all the movies of Johnny Depp will be displayed, and you can either watch it on Netflix, Disney Plus, or somewhere in AVOD. I think that's a powerful tool. And then there are a couple of features. One we call Continue Watching. That is a platform-wide solution. So think of, you have watched a show on Netflix, haven't finished it yet. You have another show on Disney Plus that you haven't finished. All of these unfinished shows, they come up in a specific area on our platform, no matter on what service you have stopped watching. I think that is a good one to bring people back in on a, let's say, on a platform level.
Okay. I think we already have only 2 minutes left. Is there any questions? Yeah, here. If someone can bring a mic. Yep, it's coming.
Hi, I have a question to Bernard. Having worked at Walt Disney for a long time, I don't know if you've seen the news this weekend of Charter and Walt Disney. Carriage fee couldn't be agreed upon. As a result, Walt Disney got kicked off. 20% of the eyeballs lost in the US. What impact do you think carriage deals from your past will have on the opportunities for connected TV?
A very good question. I mean, there have been disputes on carriage every year. Warner had a dispute, and then Disney has a dispute. So I think it's nothing that doesn't happen. But of course, it always creates some sort of frustration for consumers, and it can only lead to, some of them might be cutting the cord and then going into streaming. I mean, we haven't touched on a topic where I think that for the Europe or the German market, that might have a significant impact on how people consume their television. That is, next year in July here, the law will change, and people who rent a flat can freely decide which TV operator they want to use instead of being forced by their landlord. I think if they realize that just having an internet connection allows them to stream linear television without having to pay a cable subscription fee, that could accelerate the transition into streaming. So to your question, I think these disputes are never good. Sometimes they have to happen because the parties cannot reach an agreement. At the end, they will come back and sit on a table and find a solution. But I would look at it with a smiling face and let them fight, and maybe some people end up as Roku customers.
Any other question? So maybe just to wrap up, because we have only 1 minute left, what will be your core focus over the next year to stand out in the TV space?
Well, from our perspective, I think we launched in Germany last 2 years ago. We launched our Roku TV program 12 months ago. So we're licensing our operating system to TV manufacturers and reached 6 agreements already. So I think one of the key goals here in Germany is definitely to grow our user base by working with more OEM partners and TV manufacturers. And then on the content side, I think there is business as usual. We are looking forward to this, as I just mentioned, law change that's happening in July. And from a global perspective, I would say we're in the middle of that transition from linear to streaming TV. And we hope that the advertising market comes back quickly in the US first, and then maybe also in Europe, which will take away a couple of our sorrows or problems that are currently there.
Dominique, what will be your main focus over the next months?
We are trying to get more data to be able to make a better programming, to find out where people want to watch what at what time. And that is something we will focus on continuously. And as we are in many countries, we are looking for local providers of content. We just signed a deal with a car content producer from Africa, which will also bring that content to Europe, and it has never been seen before here, so that's an exciting thing that we're doing.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen, and let's welcome back Jan Krieger for the next panel about Connected TV in Europe, the future center of home applications. Thank you.
Thank you.